Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. He says that she herself has both human and monster souls in her body, and she's also living a contradictory existence. And it's said that she can see those who are in between life and death. It might have been stranger if she didn't notice. She asks what it's like, the feeling of crushing and consuming the original soul. He says dunno. He worried a lot in his past if he and Karin are different people, are Karin's memories not his, and who is he with his memories of Earth? Though it must be different for Hworin, since the original is actually still in her body. Hworin says he isn't the owner of his body, calling him a thief, saying he has no right to the body. He says in the neighborhood next to his hometown, there's someone who turns into a green giant when he gets mad. He says his name is Bruce, asking if she knows him. He laughs saying that it's funny since he has two opposing personalities that hate each other, but that's what makes it fun since they are polar opposites. He says the moral is, whether it's the original soul, or a new one. The both are different, but that's how they coexist. Whether they wanted it or not, they were born into one body, there's no sin in being born. Hworin is stunlocked, then says there are those for whom being born is a sin. He says he understands her agony. Then we learn she's only 3 years old, technically. He walks away, saying see you later. She seems to be thinking about something. Then it jumps to the next day. Karin mentions the south part of the academy. He says there's a reason he's out so early, is for the mission board. The commissions here help you level up to prepare for the main quest. But his goal isn't to take them to level up. He just wanted to test something else, but then he wonders why the hell Alicia is staring at the board so hard. He says he doesn't have much info on Alicia, since she got gutted in his past life. He calls out to her, asking why she's doing missions so early into the semester. She says she needs money. He says that her support fund should be big for being second rank. She says they won't give it to her since her family's income is in the top 10%. He says it was similar to a scholarship in Korea. She also says her parents believe she needs to be independent so they won't give her money either. He says if she needs money immediately, she should do the patrol mission. She says they'll accept 3 people, asking if he will go with her. He says no, he's here for something else. He'll focus on keeping his oath of helping those in need. The first mission is to find Butterfly, a cat. The exp and pay is small, but the commandment is his goal after all. If he saves and returns Butterfly, he'll be able to block the owner from the misfortune of losing their pet and falling into depression. He turns it in, and gets 5 points for completing it. He starts to laugh like a maniac, saying the easy missions are going to be the best. Which scares the little girl. Then he sees a guy getting beaten up, and sees it as a free point. Then he finds a ring for a couple. He says there's one mission more important than points this early. He almost forgot about it. We see a house that looks like the KFC guy. Okay, never mind, it is indeed the KFC guy. He's struggling to make a sauce for his chicken. Karin says he knows, and the man turns around to see the Chad saying that he needs to add starch syrup, then the problem will be solved. Karin leaves. The colonel wonders what's with him, asking who the hell would add this to chicken. He tries it, then instantly realizes it was right. He earns 5 points for this. He's surprised since all he did was fulfill his own selfish interests. He says this is the best and laughs. While he's going full psycho, Hworin sees him, and says he's a weirdo. Then Josephine says she left her alone since she didn't leave the city. But she still needs permission to go out. Hworin turns around. And Josephine wonders what's with the sudden change. Hworin recalls Karin saying there's no sin to being born, but then recalls someone else telling her she shouldn't have been born. Even though we can't see her face, she seems happy to be told she isn't a sin. It jumps to the hunting ground. Josephine says the first-year students will be evaluated on their survival tactics at the hunting ground. If you arrive at the cabin at the northern end of the forest, they'll pass. She tells them all to wear your rank armbands, and they can return the armbands at the cabin. Depending on the time it takes for them to arrive with their armbands, they'll receive points, and those points can be exchanged for a prize. Karin doesn't see Hworin around, and says she usually doesn't participate in these anyways. Then we hear Alicia. He asks if she resolved her mission. She says yes, thanks to him she was able to receive some living expenses. He says that's good, then says he bought this candy for his younger sister, but it's too sweet. We learn it's the honey bomb candy she wanted way earlier. Josephine says it's time to start, and a summoning circle appears in the sky. Karin says he's seen all sorts of magic, but only Josephine can do something like this. Saying she's the Great Witch. He teleports to a random area in the forest. He hears people fighting. He explains how it's an important event where even the professors have to do retries. It's a battle royale, where you start at random locations and have to gain points by stealing armbands. He runs, saying he hopes they have fun fighting, and he has no interest in them. The one who is the most dangerous right now is Alicia, with her shoulder strap. He says since Warren isn't here, if he can deal with Alicia it's free points. He says she may not know, but he put a tracking rune in her candy. So he'll be able to meet her again. He laughs like a maniac, screaming her name. It jumps to Josephine, telling Eryu she'll enter the forest too, as it's best to be careful. Then she wonders where Warren is at. Eryu says he didn't send her out, and she decided to participate on her own. We see her chasing behind Karin, and she's pretty close, and Eryu says it seems like she's had a change of heart. It jumps to Alicia sweating, saying why are you acting like this? Since she's been attacked by multiple people, they say the skill gap is unfair. A man leaps at her from behind, and says to please be knocked out, but the dude gets hit by a rock from downtown. As Karin threw it at him, she asks if he saved her. He says so pretty, and she begins to blush. But he means that her blue armband is pretty. She says she trusted him, since he gave her candy. He says that since she's a pure fighting type, she can't use her Vigilant Eyes ability properly. But he can use this, to get her armband. She's incomparable to her real genius sister. But Alicia is still among the top 1%. Even though she dealt with so many people earlier, she blocks his attack, and wonders why the hell he is so strong. She recognizes that his close quarter fighting, and strategy to poke from the outer range, he's playing her. Counterattacking and pressuring her, but she can see gaps, so if she can aim for that. She does exactly that, and thrusts into one of his gaps. But he says her lack of practice due to over-reliance on her talent. He uses land to deflect her attack, not to push it down. Chal, to thrust forward. Alicia sees the attack coming. Karin explains that combining these three basics will create an extreme counter which is none other than Spear Intent itself. He calls it the 6 steps, block capture plaque. The names are a bit weird, not gonna lie. Alicia gets sent backward, dropping her sword. Then begins to cough profusely. She says that if she didn't block it immediately with aura it would have been dangerous. It's not that he's too strong or fast, his mastery is just on a whole different level. She asks how the hell he is a 5th rank knight, saying it's her total defeat. He takes her armband, saying he'll use it well. We hear more screams, and he wonders what the sound is. Then a giant sword clashes with his spear. He says someone using a sword this heavy could only mean, then gets interrupted by someone saying he didn't expect him to block that. We see Drawn saying he should put the armband down, and calls him a 5th rank. Karin sighs, saying he didn't want to meet Drawn here. Even after defeating countless people he's completely injury-free, which shows he's different from Alicia. But he says there's no helping it. He begins to run saying there's no point to fight him now. Drawn is confused, and he says that he definitely just ran, and that he wants this armband. Drawn starts to hard pursue him, and Karin asks why Alicia is following him. She says she doesn't want to die. Karin says he doesn't need to fight, he just needs to take the armband with him. Then he sees the cabin, but spots Cranel with a golem, blocking off his path. Cranel says he needs the armband. Alicia says it's unfair he's blocking the exit. Karin sighs, saying he's blocked on both sides. He starts to crack his neck saying oh well. Alicia sees him to take a stance, and wonders if he's about to fight. Karin says if he can't avoid the fight then he has no choice but to face the both of them. It jumps to later, with Karin knocking on a door, asking if he can choose his prize for first place. A professor says 3 armbands is quite impressive. Karin says that he was just lucky, and it flashbacks to Alicia seeing the fight. She explains how he pierced Drawn's magical sword's cores before it was able to reach its max, and shoved another into the ground so he can't retrieve it with telekinesis. He dodged the swords he couldn't block, and used them to break the golems. He also used Drawn as a human shield to block the golems. While Drawn was busy with the golems, Karin targeted the cores breaking them. Then he quickly dealt with Cranel. She says it's like someone who has been on the battlefield countless times. His battle IQ is insanely high. She says it's like watching her sister fight. Karin tells them that they lack practice, due to over-reliance on their talent. Alicia starts to feel motivated, saying that she too should try working harder. Drawn says it felt like Karin knew his abilities very well. Cranel also had a similar feeling. Karin said golems are big and powerful, but if it were him he'd have a friend to protect him. Cranel turns into Yamcha, saying he has no friends, L for Cranel. This caused all of them to remember Karin in their own ways. With Karin being finished, the strongest participant left now is the druid Yule. But sadly for her, it's not only participants there, as the greatest mage in the academy is present right now, none other than Marette. She sends a giant aqua ball towards Yule, which is an unfortunate matchup for her. This is how the hunting ground practice was meant to begin, at least that's what Karin believed. We see Hwoarn appear behind Marette, and Marette asks for her name. Marette says that it looks like she's looking for someone, seeing a lot of Karin lookalikes. Hwoarn dashes past her, but Marette stops her with an ice wall. She says she can ignore her since she's not a participant, but she can't do the same. Hwoarn says that's annoying. It jumps back to Karin, who has earned 117 points, and he starts to look at the prizes, saying that the shark bear's bile is rare. But he knows what he wants, as he takes the mandrake seeds. Then they ask him what he'll do with the remaining points. He says he'll take some earmuffs and plant supplements. He heads out saying that it was a good haul. He says it's never worked out this well in the game. It's also his first time seeing Jaeger and Lark finish too. Karin says it seems like they work well together. Jaeger says they are gonna train more. Karin suggests they help Kranel find his golem gore. Kranel is surprised, and Karin says at times like this he should just say thanks, and accept the help. Karin sighs, saying he worked a lot in his past life with Kranel, and he's a huge asset, and things are ending nicely. They helped Kranel find his core. Alicia is slightly injured, Drawn is out of weapons. Yule is dead maybe. He helps her off the floor, saying Marette was too much. The forest begins to shake, and animals start to run too. Yule says to run away Marette. Karin asks what she means. Karin is confused since for a talent like Marette, this area is a playground to her, but we see her gassed out. Saying she needs to analyze, she looks up to see Hwoarn leaping toward her. She shoots out icicles towards her. They break while on Hwoarn's body. Marette says she needs a higher tier magic. While she promised the professors she wouldn't use advanced magic, she's been using it this entire time, but it's still futile in the presence of Hwoarn. She gets kicked, causing her to go flying. Hwoarn walks toward her, and Marette starts to tremble, saying don't come any closer, as she realizes that Hwoarn is closer to a natural disaster than a human. Out of sheer panic, Marette raises her hand for another spell, yelling to get away. Then we hear Josephine tell Hwoarn to stop, and she asks Marette if she is okay. Marette starts to say that she's fine, but falls unconscious. Josephine sees this. Karin says there were some unexpected results from practice. One of them is that he, a 5th rank student, got the highest points. And the first-year ace Hwoarn, and the second-year ace Marette battled. Karin says he's worried that she'll awaken as the boss earlier than schedule, but says it should be fine. He says there should be 3 weeks until she awakens. So he should prepare first. He heads to the forest outskirts, and looks around saying he came to meet someone here. He tilts his head back, and starts putting eye drops in. Then he throws something, saying he tripped, and wonders what he should do. It's the mandrake seed, and he says it's his mother's precious gift. A voice then asks why he's crying. Karin explains in the game this is a one-time use Easter egg. It's a Taoist hermit. It's some folklore about a man who drops his axe, and a hermit asks if it's gold or silver. The Easter egg was the same way, and some user tested every single item in the game, and that's how this specific combo was found. The hermit asks if the gold or silver seeds were his, and Karin says no to both of them. The hermit then holds another seed, saying this must be his then. Karin's eye drops start putting in a lot of work, and he says yes. The hermit says due to not showing temptation for the gold or silver seeds, he'll give him all 3 in return. Then he starts to fall asleep in the bath. Karin starts to laugh, saying items can be duped. He says the normal seeds improve mana, but the other 2 have special effects. In his past life, Sihu ate the gold, and he ate the silver. But now they are both his, and he says the reason Marette turns into a vampire is due to a mission in 3 weeks. With the Fog City's murderous vampire, John Doe. This is part of why he showed his strength, or else in the future they'd not work with him. In a week they'll all recover, and he can suggest making a party. Simple version is in 3 weeks Marette will turn into a vampire. We see her friend waking up beside her. She quickly starts to ask how she is, saying she was worried about her. Marette says nothing, and Karin keeps saying that if he can form the party he can save Marette from misfortune. He'll train Alicia, employ Drawn, somehow convince Yule and get close to Kranel. He says this will be easy, as long as there aren't any unexpected variables. Of course he jinxes himself, as Marette sees her friend as a blood bag and goes to bite her throat, saying she's thirsty. It jumps to Hworin saying this is boring, and Josephine sighing, saying she shouldn't have sent her, and she should go self-reflect. Hworin debates ditching, but then gets jump-scared by Karin. He introduces himself, asking her to open the window. He says he knows it's random, but he didn't want to come empty-handed, so he brought her cake. She says coming inside is against school rules. He tells her he's in the tree, and laughs saying Josephine isn't here anyway. He wonders if she's banned from going outside for a bit. He says he understands why Josephine does it, but that he doesn't agree with it. Hworin says that she just hasn't come by in 4 days. Karin asks if she hasn't come by once, but he falls from the tree. Karin says that he'll be back later with food. He starts to haul cheeks, saying that there's no way she'd leave Hworin alone, and there must be something going on. At the same time he sees Dinah and Fermac looking for her too. He heads to Marette's room, and the security guard denies his entry. Karin starts to bribe Khan with food, saying that Josephine asked him to give it to him. Karin says he can't visit Marette, and her roommate Isabel is missing too. And it's weird, there's a guard here at the sick bay. We see a rune on the food and Kron's tummy starts to ache. Karin asks what's wrong, and Kron asks him to guard the door for him. He's got the Hershey squirts. Karin sighs, saying he hopes he's wrong. He lifts the blanket looking for Marette, and instead finds Isabel laying in the bed. Then he spots the fang bite in her neck, and he realizes Marette has awakened as a vampire. He face palms saying this is 3 weeks earlier than what was meant to happen. He explains how the boss fight has 4 stages. The first stage is when you deal with a monster wave, second is that you hold her back with magic circles, then damage dump to next phase. The next stage is she summons blood monsters you need to fight, and then the final stage, he doesn't say what happens, but says it's crucial. He says even with the other first years, getting to stage 3 would be easy. But Alicia is injured, he broke Drin's weapons, and he broke Cranel's golem. He starts to panic, saying they are screwed, and says this usually happens after the Fog City's murderous vampire encounter. In his past life they quickly waited outside the dorms and stopped her, but see who let her flee. But now he can't do that, since he's made some of the other first years actually useless. He thought about Hworin, but she's too unpredictable. He quickly runs to the training room, and tells Dran about the mission. Dran goes to tell him no, but Karin tells him he'll give gold. Then tries to sweeten it by adding some soul dust, but Dran is already locked in, and joins the party. Karin then goes to the library, and Yule is asking how he knows these things, and he tells her if she helps him, he'll teach her the alphabet, just some runes. She asks what she needs to do, and joins the party. It then cuts to him talking to Jaeger and Lark, and he tells them about the situation. He wonders if it's too much for them to handle. But they both are hella interested. Karin is glad. Now they've got the minimum conditions to clear the first part. This is the best they can do right now. He recalls Sihu talking about how Marette hid in the forest for a month, and says there's only one forest here in the academy. He goes to the hunting ground area, and the other party members ask him how he's going to find her. He says that'd take too long, since they have Yule. He asks her. She wonders how he knows so much about her, but goes along with it. She taps her spear to the ground, asking the spirits to guide them to her. Lark and Jaeger are surprised by the spirits, but of course Karin can't see spirits. He asks if they found her. The other members stare at him, and he wonders why they are staring. They quickly say behind him, and he blocks an attack. He cuts a monster in half, wondering why they are suddenly coming out. Dran then tells him there are way more on their way. Jaeger asks if Marette became a monster. He says no. Lark begins to use his grimoire, and Jaeger gets ready to fight them too. Karin tells him not to charge the front, or else they'll surround him. He orders him to step back, then gets Lark to cover. He swaps positions with Jaeger and charges in, saying they should all know their roles. Dran is surprised by how well he's handling the situation, saying that he's closer to a commander, and wonders how he's a 5th rank knight. Jaeger asks where Marette is, saying there's only monsters. Yule says she's not sure either. They start to wonder if they are being controlled by Marette. Karin quickly says that isn't the case, as she won't be able to control them so easily. Even if she were, she'd not let them rampage like this. Dran says if she isn't doing it, then why are they all attacking them? Karin says that monsters attack according to their habitats, so if something came into their habitat they couldn't handle. This would explain that. Which would mean they need to run from none other than Marette. He orders Yule and Lark to the back, and tells Dran and Jaeger to step back too in support. Since he'll be taking the front, due to his commandment, he gets a stat bonus. He grips his spear, and he and the rest prepare to fight off Marette. We see Marette is crying and grunting. Yul sees this, and Dran says it won't change anything. Since they need to subjugate her, he sends her sword at her, but is surprised to see that it gets blocked by an orb. Lark recognizes it as a familiar born from vampire blood. Karin says not to worry, the orb was just recently born and if they keep Marette busy the orb won't receive enough blood. Dran says that a mage who has great defense is a threat. Karin says that's fine. Marette starts to scream and launches an attack at them. Karin calls out to Yul to block it, and she puts her hand onto the ground, saying the forest is her territory, summoning a tree wall. Some of the tree begins to get broken, but Yul does her best to keep it up. Jaeger starts to worry if it'll break, but Lark says not to jinx it. Yul says that one attack ate half of her mana, and her mana heart is throbbing. But she has to keep going. Coring starts to make a mark on wood, saying to keep holding for a bit longer, and he'll be able to turn it around. She starts to huff, asking if he can really do it. He says yeah, not to worry. The orb begins to receive more blood from Marette. He explains the entire boss fight again, but tells us she won't be using her full power until the very end of the boss fight. He says it's the same as his past life. He tells Lark to leave soon, since he's about to run out of mana, and that once Yul joins to run very far. He says until now the number of attacks weren't that powerful, but it's about what happens after. Karin realizes it's about to start. She uses an alchemy magic to explode the blood crystals, causing the rest to panic as the barrier Yul made shatters. Yul starts to chant to cast something, then uses ancient rune magic. Karin says it's working, and although only a pure blood druid could activate it, he drew it. He says that it's similar to rune magic, but it's ancient and you can only get it after clearing Yul's scenario. Dran and Jaeger are surprised as a giant wicker doll forms from above them. Even Yul is surprised it worked. Karin says it's kind of cheating he helped her, but he had no choice. Karin tells Jaeger that there's an owl bear he left alive from the earlier mobs, and throw it at the wicker man. Karin says he prepped all of this while they fought. Jaeger yeets that puppy at the wicker man, it lands atop its chest then gets absorbed by it. Karin says if you sacrifice something to it, the golem will move until its energy is depleted. He cheers it on, and it throws out some kind of green smoke attack. Karin sees that Yul is clearly struggling to maintain it. He tells her if she doesn't hold it they'll all die. The golem starts to square up with Marette. She unleashes an attack of bloody spears, some of them pierce through the wicker man. They start to ask Karin if it'll be okay. He says don't worry, as it's not a living creature. So having holes is fine, at least this is what he thought was the case. But the wicker man gets pierced straight through its chest, and Karin realizes that this is bad. As the wicker man falls over, he realizes his plan won't work as intended, as this is a special difficulty version of Marette. Yul falls to her knees, and Karin tells her to run since she can't help anymore. She starts to run, and Jaeger asks if they can do it with just the three of them. He tells them she used all of her wide-range attacks, so this means it's time to get in and do damage. They tell him to wait for them. Marette sends the blood spears to them, but they all manage to deflect it. Dran sends in one of his blades, and it zigzags straight to the red orb. But he still cannot pierce it. Jaeger comes from the top rope, with his signature helicopter, and smacks the orb. Karin says that's Jaeger's specialty, which returns the damage he's absorbed. Jaeger gets careless, thinking he broke it, but Karin yells saying to lock in, since Marette's third phase is starting now. She unleashes an attack called Realm of Blood, creating a massive red dome around everyone. Jaeger and Dram's weapons are on the floor, as they are unconscious. Karin stands his ground, but says they are stuck in this realm, as it's a trap from shattering the orb. The orb forcefully took her blood, creating a blood werewolf. Karin sighs saying he didn't expect to be the last one. But it won't matter, since the result is guaranteed. It jumps to seeing a blurry ceiling, and Marette opening her eyes. She looks over and sees Isabella's neck, and leaps toward it like we've seen. Isabella looked at her in fear, but Marette continued to drain her blood. Marette compares her screams to a beautiful piano, and when she finally snaps out of it she realizes what she's done. She saw her blood all over the bed, and felt nothing but disgust with herself. Now she understands that she's hurt Isabella. She started to cry, and before she knew it, she was out in the woods, and that she ran away from it all. But now Karin is here, back to reality. The werewolf is screaming, then starts to build something up in its throat, launching it at Karin. He smiles and says that a dog shouldn't dare to bite a human. He cuts the dog's attack with a spin, returning it to heaven. But the dog doesn't stop. and suits its own chest to summon more little pups. Karin says he's really got that dog in him. He throws his weapon over them, while sliding under, then grabs back onto it, and throws it, hitting a collateral on the dogs. Karin asks if that's all, saying he expected more, since it started off so strong. This pisses the dog off, and it disappears. Karin realizes that it's moving too fast for him to see, then says he's got something to teach it. He says what's needed in victory isn't 100 steps, and that victory is determined from exploiting weakness with a single step, and that there's no way he'd fall for the same trick twice. He uses another technique from the Calamity Serpent intent, called Poisonous Dragon's Exit. We see on the outside of the realm of blood that it's beginning to crack, and it fades out of existence like a piece of glass breaking. They make it out of the realm, and Karin sees the dog on the floor. It begins to cough, and stretches its hand out trying to fight still. Karin says fighting till the end is admirable, but not to worry as he'll save her, since she's technically the dog's mom. It is now time for the final phase of the boss fight. As soon as the phase starts, she instantly incapacitates one of the party members, which is why it isn't something that can be cleared solo. Normally you'd get others to help you, but he has nobody to help. She bites his neck, and begins to suck his blood. Karin says this is what it's like to be robbed of your life. He clenches his fist, and says he has a skill for this. He uses the regeneration skill he got from the Duke, and clenches his teeth, saying he's just returning that kind smile that she used to have. He puts his hand on her head, saying to drink slowly, or else she'll choke. She starts to cry as she begins to snap out of the trance she's in. Karin says that even the Duke killed his servant instantly after becoming a vampire, and that since it took a month for Sihu to find her before, and all she drank was monster blood. But she still refused to kill people. That's how powerful her willpower is. He thought that the way the game ended her story was too harsh, for someone so kind-hearted. She continuously cries, apologizing to Karin. He smiles up at her, and recalls his master teaching him to respect this world's inhabitants. He laughs to try and cheer Marette up, and says that he's already walking a different path from Sihu, and he's cleared the first stage's boss, earning 100 points, and some rank ups. It cuts to a prison that Josephine made, and Marette is happily eating potatoes, saying she's missed them. But then Karin jump scares her, saying good morning. He asks Josephine if he can go in, and she says if he trusts her then sure. He enters the room, which surprises her, making her choke on her food. He tells her to eat slowly, but notices that she's really enjoying them. He says he thought her taste buds would change, but she says that potatoes will always taste good. He gets into her face, which flusters her, then she tells him to get away because she smells like liquid ass. He tells her she bit his neck when he didn't wash either. She eventually cools down, and he says that she doesn't smell. She says that she was scared. He asks what she means. She says that Warren was terrifying. She really thought she was going to die. Karin realizes he's at fault for why Warren was there, and that he changed something in her, which made her go meet Marette during the practice, and that she didn't hold back, which is what led to the faster awakening. She says that she couldn't do like he did. He didn't give up against the spirit bodies, then finally succeeded. She calls him cool, and he says it was nothing impressive. But he likes happy ending, where the good guys are rewarded. He says that she's a great person, she's nice, she's pretty, so he'd like for her to be happy. This causes her to blush, then she tells him that she needs to wash up, asking if he can leave. He says alright, then waves saying he'll see her later. She smiles, and thanks him for comforting her, but she struggles internally with her emotions. Karin explains to us all that she's temporarily isolated. But he believes it'll end soon, since Warren, a demi-human, is going to school without issues. So even if people find out Marette is a demi-human, people shouldn't care. Then we hear Ryu call out to him, and he asks if he can borrow some of Karin's time. He says it's his first time meeting him personally, then asks how he's feeling. Karin says he's fine, but asks what he wants. Ryu says it's about Marette's punishment. He is surprised since he didn't think that she'd get punished at all, which will not lead to a happy ending. He quickly tells Ryu he can explain it all. Ryu says it's fine, her punishment is already determined. Karin pleads saying to listen to him, and he tries to tell him that she's no harm. But he laughs, saying there is no punishment. He says he doesn't believe she's dangerous, he just wanted to see what Karin would do. Now he has no doubts, and not to worry as her isolation will end, as soon as her mental stability is checked. He says he's a little curious about the details. Karin sighs out of relief. Then says he explains what was okay to be exposed, that Marette wasn't the monster people believed her to be. Ryu thanks him, saying they'll need to make an official announcement. But now that he's heard the details, he needs to do his job. He bows while thanking Karin, saying he's glad he helped fix the issue they created due to their complacency, and he'll fulfill any request. Karin says how worthy of a chairman, and this is someone who always acknowledged weakness. He recalls his master saying though she's experienced countless failures, he was never a part of those. Which means he can trust Ryu's goodwill. He tells him to raise his head, saying that's his request. It jumps back to Marette in her bed. She remembers Karin letting her bite him, and how he comforted her. She starts to ask what right she has for apologies, wondering if Isabelle is safe. Due to how much guilt she's feeling, she didn't even bother resisting Josephine's imprisonment magic, and locked herself up under it. When Karin visited, she tried to pretend to be okay, but she is exhausted. She only thinks of herself as a monster, but him saying he wants her to be happy, sent any concern she had flying. She began to cry out of hope, but due to the encouragement he gave her, and how she's constantly thinking about her made her feel another emotion too. While Karin is in class, he overhears students talking about Marette. Karin says it's been a week since then. There was a bit of chaos due to the bastards who opposed Marette, but since Warren is enrolled it fell flat. Then he overhears them saying that she's still in isolation. What the hell is Jaeger cooking up? Officially her isolation has finished, but when Marette returned and went looking for Isabella she didn't find her. So she locked herself up in her room. She thinks that Isabelle should hate her, or be afraid. She said if she were her, she'd be afraid of a friend who took a mic chunk out of her. She starts to feel sad, and realizes she has to leave the academy. She then gets knocks on the door, asking who is there. She opens the door wondering who it'd be at this time, and Isabelle jumps at her, hugging her. She begins to cry, asking if she's okay, and how she's feeling. Marette asks why she's here, and she asks if she wasn't meant to come. Marette asks if she isn't afraid of her. Isabelle smiles, saying she saw it all before she passed out. After biting her, she began to cry. She says no matter what, she'll always think of Marette as a friend. So no matter what happens, she'd like for her to think of her as a friend too. Marette bursts into tears, thanking her, saying she really thought she'd hate her. Isabelle says that she'd be here sooner, but the hospital didn't let her out, and a junior snuck her out, and points behind her. But she sees that he isn't there. Marette realizes who it is. We see Karin walking away, and he's happy. Marette covers her face, saying he helped her again. She starts to feel a whole load of emotions. This is how the first part of the story ended, with a happy ending for everyone. This didn't occur in the game, or his past life. Some things went as planned, others not so much. But he's glad for it all, which proves that there are endings out there that are nothing but good, which helps confirm that there is true hope to there being a true ending. If you've watched till the end, comment, zebra, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.